In this tutorial, I'd like to demonstrate how to use the Analysis ToolPak in Excel for creating a frequency distribution for quantitative data and also producing a histogram. What we have here are data for 17 students, their first name and their performance in exam 1 as a percent. You'll notice under column F, what I've done is created the bins that I would use for classifying these individuals. From 0 to 59.9, of course, would be an F. 60 to 69.9 would be a D category, and then we see 70 to 79.9, 80 to 89.9, and 90 to 100. Now, to the right of that, in the column E, what I've labeled upper bin limit is the highest value in each of my categories you see there in column F. So 59.9 is the highest value that would fall into that very first category, 0 to 59.9. And then 69.9 all the way up through to 100. We're going to use this information to construct a histogram and also produce a frequency distribution for this variable. But first of all, let's go through how we can use this information to construct a frequency distribution. I've come up under Data, come over to the Analysis group and selected with the left mouse button click the Analysis ToolPak. Then what I want to do is to use the option, the Analysis tool of Histogram, and click OK. Now the first thing we're going to have to do is identify the input range, and what this is going to be, it's going to be the information that we want to use to construct our frequency distribution. So click on this icon next to that box, and I will click and drag then the data we have. The next thing is the bin range, and for the bin range I don't select the categories I've determined beforehand that I want to place our cases into, but instead the upper bin limit that I have in the cell in columns E rather. Click on that icon to come back. I have not selected any rows. I'll show you in a moment what we can do to select rows. And for right now, let's just produce the output using the default to a worksheet, a new worksheet. I'll go ahead and click OK, select the no other options, and right there is our frequency distribution. Now one of the things that you'll notice may be a little odd. First of all, we have our bins that I selected and the frequencies of the number of cases that fall into each of those categories. But you notice we have in row 7 is the extra bin of more, anything that's greater than 100. Well, there are no cases that fall into a category that's greater than 100. So what it does then, it goes through and takes our bin limits, then has one more category, which is anything that's above the highest bin upper limit that we've selected. Let me go back to that example. I'll delete the sheet first of all. And let's go back to where our data are. Again, data analysis, histogram. And now what I'm going to do, instead of the range that we had before for the bin limit, I'm just going to choose 59.9 all the way up through 89.9. Click back on this icon, click OK, and there you notice what were 3 that were in the category from 90 to 100 now are in the category more. And the other categories are the same that they were before. So what we want to do when we construct our bins and then have our upper bin limits in the cells next to them, select all of the upper bin limits except for the very last one, and that will be the all-inclusive category. That's all cases that are above 89.9. But I'll go ahead and delete the sheet again. Let me show you what happens if we select then the label for the variable exam 1. Come back under data, data analysis, histogram. Let me go back here. Select the data. This time I've selected the label. I'll keep my bins the same for right now. Our check on labels. and I'm going to put the output beginning in cell H2. Range, I'm going to choose H2. And that's going to be the first cell in the first column where the output is placed. I'll click OK. Now you notice what has happened here. It has taken what is the very first bin, upper bin limit of 59.9, and it treats it as though it is the label for the column of bins. And that throws everything off for the histogram and for our frequency distribution. Instead of having 5 categories that I created, we now actually only have 3 categories. So what we're going to do here then is, let's go ahead and delete this. Let's go through this process again. Data analysis, histogram. Now when I select the bin range, I want to make sure I choose the cell that's above the very first upper bin limit. And I happen to have a label there of upper bin limit. So if I want to choose exam 1, that is what the cell in B1 as part of my input range, then I have to make sure then that I have a cell before the very first upper bin limit. Click OK. And now we're back to our correct frequency distribution that we had before. So that's one little problem you may run into when you are generating these frequency distributions using the label of a variable. Make sure you then have a label or a blank empty cell before the very first upper bin limit. Let me delete this again. And the next thing I'll show you is when generating our frequency distribution. I'll go back to the same process again. The options we have here, for example, is a cumulative percentage. Go ahead and click. First of all, one thing to note, if they, I don't know why they have a Pareto sorted histogram. Anytime you have a Pareto chart, that means that the largest bar will be the first one, the one off to the left, then the one to the right of that would be the next highest, one to the right of that is the third highest, and so on. So would assume then that we have nominal data. What this does tell us, though, is while it's generating a histogram, we can still use this for generating frequency distributions even if we don't have quantitative data. And I'll show you then what the chart output looks like, and to show you that what this first generates is actually a bar chart. So while I'm demonstrating how to use this routine for a quantitative variable, we could just as easily generate a frequency distribution and a bar chart using this routine as well. But now I've selected the cumulative percentage as an option. Click OK, and you notice what it does here. It generates a frequency distribution and then a cumulative percent distribution next to that, which does assume, in column J, that output does assume then that we do have a quantitative variable. If I wanted to generate a frequency distribution and also then a percentage distribution, this is just text the output. So I can insert a column in between, label it percent if you will, then I can have a total column, and then I can sum up all the values that occur in those 5 categories. A percent then would be nothing more than the number in that category divided by total sample size times 100. Let me go ahead and do the same thing then for the next categories. Total in that category divided by the total sample size times 100. And there I've created my percent distribution. I can go ahead then and Perhaps reduce the number of decimal points here, and then keep the reduce them by one more, so it's only 1 decimal point. Don't need any more precision than that, and I'll increase then the total by 1. There. And so we can easily construct then a percent distribution, as well as have reported a frequency and a cumulative percentage distribution. So this is how then we can use this routine in order to, the histogram routine, to generate frequency distributions. And I've demonstrated it here for a quantitative variable, but we could just as well use the same information for generating a frequency distribution for a categorical variable. Well, now I'd like to go ahead and illustrate how we can use the same routine to generate a histogram. I'm going to first of all just delete the output that I already have created. And what we're going to do then is go back up to Data, choose Data Analysis, again Histogram, and whenever we execute any sort of routine using the Data Analysis ToolPak, in this case Histogram, it keeps the most recent input information that we've used in this current session in. So you may want to change it if you're using then different sorts of things. So what I'd like to do then is to deselect cumulative percentage, but now I'm going to select then chart output and go ahead and click OK. Now you notice what it's generated here is the output we've seen before, but now what we see is what is in essence a bar chart. Let me go ahead and select that, and I'll move that, click on the Design tab under the Chart Tools to its own worksheet, so it's larger and easier for us to work with. And you notice it generates a bar chart for us. So if we had then a variable that is categorical, we could just simply dress this up and we would have our bar chart. The first thing I'm going to do here though is to delete the legend. So just go ahead and click on the legend, make sure it's selected, and then hit delete. The next thing I want to do, since this is a histogram, which means that we're implicitly graphing quantitative data, click on any one of the bars, move your cursor on top of a bar, and then select them all by pressing the left mouse button. Now press the right mouse button and come down to Format Data Series. What you'll see here then is the second line that is gap width. Click and drag that so you have a gap width of 0. You notice what happens. It takes any space out between the bars, and for histogram there should be no space in between our bars. So now it looks more like what a histogram should look like. Otherwise it's just a regular bar chart, which implies categorical, not quantitative data. I can also here at this point change what we have here by, first of all, I want to put a black border around the bars to distinguish them more easily from one another. So click on the circle next to the solid line, come down to color, and I'll just select black. And you'll notice then it now has put black outline around each of the bars. The next thing I like to do is change the color. So I'll click those again to highlight them, come back to your paint can. And now for the color, instead of the blue, if I were printing this up or adding it to a report that would be printed up, maybe I would just choose like a gray or a dark gray. Black may be a little too much color, too much ink there to use. But since we're just using this for a presentation, for this video, I want to have a color, but I'll make this orange. It's just a little bit out of your screen. And I'll click on the X to close that. And now we've changed the look of the bars. Now they're touching one another. We've put a black outline around them, and also then we've used a different color. Now I also like to set off the plot area from the information around it. So move your cursor somewhere in the blank plot area, left mouse button to select, right mouse button now to bring up your options, and I'm going to come down with the left mouse button and click on Format Plot Area. And what I'm going to do here, under Border, choose Solid Line, and I'll just choose a regular black border, and I'll close that. And now we can see that all the text and the labels are distinct from the actual plot area. Now at this point, I'm just going to add to the title, I'll make it a histogram of exam number 1 scores, whatever be a worthwhile title here. I can also then, for the variable that's being plotted, exam number 1 score. Now one thing I do want to change here, and that is what are the labels for each category. Right now it reports only the upper bin limit for each category. What I'm going to do here instead is move the cursor on top of one of the values here, somewhere in this range where you see the axis labels are being reported. Left mouse button to select and right mouse button to bring up the options. And I'm going to come down here to select data. Now when I bring up select data, this is actually indicating what information is being reported here on the chart. The horizontal category axis labels, you notice what is being checked or what's being used here. What I'm going to do is edit that. So click on the edit button. Once you click on the edit button, now we need to click on the spreadsheet icon. And now when you see this icon, it means then it's ready for you to select what you want to put in as those labels. I'm going to come over to the labels I already created when I identified the bin categories. Click back on this label, and yeah, that's exactly what I want. Click OK. And now you notice I've replaced then the upper bin limits with the entire bin category labels that I created initially. Now I click OK. And that's how then we can go ahead and very easily change all of our categories, our category labels rather, to be more complete.